Hello.
Hey.
It's a little bit different on our side, on my side at least, the way how we record it, but it's still Biweeklycast. It's episode number 40. The hosts are here. It's me, Dima.
I'm Slava.
Cool. And we are going to be talking about a topic. Somehow we do not have follow-up for this one. We'll probably fix this by the next time, but no follow-up this time around. And I think since this is in our schedule, this is your episode, Slava, we will introduce a tradition. Like, can we say introduce tradition to talk about themes?
Yeah, have a theme corner and talk about my themes, and then we'll jump into the large language models.
Cool. I hope we will jump into discussion of large language model, not
Hopefully
into
so.
the models themselves, right?
Well,
let's see how it goes.
You're a free man. I mean, you can jump wherever you'd like. So
it makes sense. Makes sense. Let's go for it.
So themes. In case you're a new listener, you probably don't know what we are talking about. That's why it's better to stop this episode and scroll back to something around a year, because usually by that time we discuss our yearly themes. And this is basically a checkup on how things are going. And I'm not looking for easy ways. That's why I have a triple split of my theme. It's a triennial, year, and season. And I was even doing months for a little while, but now it's just a season. And basically, since it's June, we could talk about the sprint of strategy, how my year of meeting is going, and then the triennial of glide as the master theme.
Yeah, you are the true master of this theme idea. You have so many different tracks going all at the same time, and it's exciting to hear how it goes for you.
Well, I find sprint of strategy success because that's exactly what I intended to do. And I launched a podcast about strategy. I ran 6 strategic sessions off season because normally people don't run strategic sessions in spring, and we still managed to get some orders. And I've pre-recorded a number of videos. I even ran a course on strategic session facilitation, a little group, study group. And basically, I wanted to build up my reputation in this domain, and I find it quite successful.
Cool. Congratulations on that. And it is interesting with, I find it relatively common with the themes where you, like in your case, you had this theme spring of strategy, and it can have so many different meanings, right? It can be, but I develop a strategy for myself, or like in your case, no, this is about me teaching other people the strategy and becoming a well-known expert in this area. I think this aspect of themes and working with themes is something that I really like. I think that there's some interesting quirkiness to it sometimes.
Indeed. And this was usually my first part of a journal. Like I would start with this little season theme. It's, if you remember, the theme system journal is split into 4 parts, 2 smaller blocks, 1 bigger block, and then just a single line at the end. And that would be my first smaller block on the page. I would write some thoughts on my theme related to this season. And to be fair, in spring, I started journaling less frequently, maybe twice a week, but still it was relatively regular.
So, interesting. I would have a question about this shorter span themes. Let me try to build up a case for the question. I think with yearly themes, you have an entire year to work on some, like to work towards something, right? And if you slip one day here or there, it's no big deal, right? You reflect, you quote unquote correct, and still make progress towards the theme. With shorter span spanning themes like God forbid daily themes or monthly or weekly themes, but at any rate, at monthly theme, a single day might be a meaningful kind of may make a meaningful contribution or not make a meaningful contribution to the team to the theme, and it may take away or add something. How do you, in your experience, was this a problem? Was there ever a case where I want a little bit like to prolong a theme for a week more, or something along those lines to get everything squared?
Well, in fact, I'm actually getting to the larger time spans because my winter and my autumn were split even into months of something.
Mm-hmm.
So I had January of something, then February of something, and right now it's just seasons. So it's already getting a bit more macro style than previously. And I think week is a good enough increment to think of. Plus 12 weeks, approximately 12 per season, is manageable. Like, this is something you can actually grasp. And I think while choosing the seasonal theme, I can be a bit more specific than yearly, because when I picked the year of meaning, it had really vast thing. And if you remember our previous yearly themes, they would change within the year, and then they would like start one way, and then you would do
Mm-hmm.
something and it would change.
Right.
My first experiment with Year of My Mind was taking me like all the way around, from meditations to neuroscience to some experiments with behavioral patterns and psychotherapy and many others. And this is basically where seasons jump in, because
Mm-hmm.
I can make this like sub themes and have a bit more focus. Because with just a broad year of meaning, it's harder for me to keep track on the current priority, how the theme evolves or changes. And these sub themes or seasonal themes, they give me more headspace, and I can think about the year of meaning wider and broader, and the seasonal theme more specifically, seeing the results, the projects that I'm running, the key results that I expect, etc.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Right. So, and then this season of strategy was connected to your year of meaning, right?
Absolutely. Well, you can even by the title kind of imagine that they're on the similar level of vagueness.
That's a key feature.
And my summer is going to be the summer of awareness, which is quite similar. I'm still not sure whether it's awareness or mindfulness. I'm picking the word specifically, but it's definitely going that way. I will take a few more days off. I will prepare for autumn intensively, and it's going to be fun. But the year of meaning in general also goes really well. And since it's not just strategy, but something more, I can include my Aspen experiences there. I could get all my side projects like ethical dilemmas and moral judgment for
Mm-hmm.
an ACP and some other institutions. And all these things they get in, and they kind of
Right.
accumulate into the year of meaning. In this case, I find more meaning in what I do, and
Mm-hmm.
I choose to do things that are more meaningful. It kind of reflects on my priorities. My calendar looks very different. There are fewer meetings that I don't pick and more that I choose, which is weird because some of them are related to Ukrainian army, and those are totally unpredictable. They could change like twice a day, but still, I feel way more connection to things in my calendar than I did last year, and I think this is the main change that I feel in the year of meaning comparing to the previous one.
That makes a lot of sense to me, and especially when you said it feels like what you are doing has more meaning now, or something along those lines. I think this is maybe the best kind of expression of what the themes are about, is that you feel like you're making progress towards something, and I think that sounds great. Interesting. So now about the connection to triennial of Glide, maybe?
And basically, I'm looking for this meaning to feel this. I can't say it's an emotion or even a feeling, this state. The
Mm-hmm.
state of glide, something I've tried to define here in winter is very similar to flow, but flow seems a bit popular, and I don't get the emotional attachment to this word. And glide is, for me, related to Harley Davidson street glide thing, and
Mm-hmm.
it describes the mood and the state I'd like to be in more often. And basically, in the journal, this is my second smaller section. It's the biggest theme, and this is where I note sections or times when I had this state of glide, and this is probably why I shuffled into twice a week, because it doesn't
Mm-hmm.
happen every day. And sometimes I just don't have anything to journal because there are days when I don't get into this state. But within a week, there are usually a few cases when I do. And this is normally the days when I journal more. And the biggest section is about the year of meaning. So basically, they are not in order, as you might have thought that would be season, year, and larger thing. So the yearly theme gets the most because I think it's something not too practical, not too
Mm-hmm.
specific. It's more time for meditation, for reflection, and it kind of connects the global state I would like to achieve, specific
Mm-hmm.
projects that I do, and there is something in between. And this something in between is the year of meaning. That's why it has the biggest part of my journaling page. And this is where I work with some concerns and doubts and thoughts and ambitions and goals and many other aspects that come when you think of meaning.
Yeah, that's interesting. And I wanted to ask you the question. You already mentioned that sometimes when you work with the yearly theme, your understanding of the theme and specifics of it might change or rather evolve as you work through it. Did you feel or did you see anything similar with your triennial theme? Did your understanding of what the glide means for you develop in this
I,
time?
I think I happened to feel it more often since I focus on this state
Mm-hmm.
more intentionally. I kind of find it in unexpected places. Previously,
Interesting.
I was mixing it up with my peaceful state, like just when my mind is peaceful. Let's say I'm drinking tea in that place at Podil, Chaguan, beautiful place, nature, but I never associated my state there with the state of glide. And when I started looking closer into it and basically on a weekly basis noticing what I feel like, what my body feels like, how my
Mm-hmm.
mind works in the state, I started finding more and more similarities between these emotions and states. And it's kind of like a subcategory of glide. There are different ways, like motorcycling brings me into the state. When I'm facilitating a strategic session, I'm usually in the state of glide, and a number of things that can get me there. And this has some modes or different types. And I started recognizing more of them. So now I have this glide category with subcategories, which is new, something I couldn't definitely do before I started the triennial.
Interesting. Interesting. I will be curious to hear more about this as you progress through your teams.
Yeah, I noticed that my themes are getting a bit philosophical in a certain way, but we'll see how it goes because I didn't start my yearly theme in winter. We just discussed it in winter, but I basically started
Mhm.
it in September. So this summer, my yearly theme kind of ends or not. We'll see. I don't have any strict rules whether I should definitely finish it or I can prolong it. Why can't a year of meaning become 16 months of meaning or 13 and a
That's
half
fine.
months of meaning?
It's your team, your rules.
Yeah, definitely. I guess that
Cool.
would be it about the themes, right?
Guess so. So the topic.
A number of things happened in my life. The first one is I attended a workshop on using GPT and I'm not sure how to pronounce new Bard Google AI name thing. G-
Gemini? No?
Gemini? Yeah, whatever. There was a workshop on using these two models, and I have a lot to say about it, but that's not the main point of our conversation. I usually have a lot to say about workshops. That's just the thing. On top of that, I'm going to be a speaker on an offline event in Kiev about using AI tools in learning and development. And on top of that, it turned out that one of Savvy events about using GPT for writing emails and messages seemed to be the easiest one to get people in. And all of these three dots kind of connected into the
Mm-hmm.
question whether you and I think that I didn't want to take artificial intelligence in the broad meaning. That's why I picked large language models, something more specific, and whether they are overhyped.
It's
Pum
interesting
pum
that
pum.
the genesis of the topic is interesting. I think risking maybe short circuiting our whole discussion. I thought when I saw that you added notes with this question and then materials and stuff, so the title as we have it in the notes for the episode reads "Are LLMs overhyped?" And I thought that maybe a better way to frame the question would be, are LLMs overhyped or not? To which the question, the answer would be yes, and then we can close it at this.
All right, that was the shortest biweekly episode. Thank you for hopping in. It was fun. Have a good week.
Yeah, like stop generating.
Well, the way I understand a
Mm-hmm.
large language model, it's a complicated category of generative AI tools like GPT and Gemini. Basically, they are capable of solving complicated language related tasks related to analyzing, synthesizing speech, and sometimes some other data, but mostly created for speech. And maybe, if you're lucky, some other data.
Right. Well,
Doesn't
I
seem
think
right? Yep.
well, yeah, I think it's. I'm not a huge kind of expert or specialist in that. I think like it is more, slightly more complicated than that, but I guess in broad strokes, maybe that's sort of right. Maybe we'll get into some of the details as
I
well.
think everything about AI gets more complicated when you get into it, but I would like
Everything
to
like
stay at the user level,
okay, okay, okay.
not get
So
deep into engineering.
so before we maybe go into the details and nitty gritty things about the stuff, like you said, you attended workshop on Chat GPT and Gemini last weekend. I wonder, like, what kind of event is that? Like, what do you get out of that? Is it like a workshop on using I don't know, like potato peeler or something like that? Like, what's the point of this thing?
We were basically working in groups trying to improve our prompts and the way we deal with information on
Hmm,
multiple types of
interesting.
requests, like creating the ethical code for a team and calculating the estimates of a technical task for software development when there is like technical requirement and you would
Hmm.
have to calculate hours and what's the best way to do it, and building the assistants, personal GPTs with prompts built into them which can optimize some of the routines that you do.
Hmm. Interesting.
It
Okay,
was.
cool.
It was. I think it was a bit too long, but again, let's not get too deep into the workshop itself yet. Just yet.
Mm-hmm.
We'll get there. I've picked a number of articles which I find interesting. The first one is from the Sprints app, and it basically gives the statistics and numbers across different industries. And their idea is that AI is disrupting, like basically these large language models, they just come in and they change entire industries completely. Things are not going to be the same, and things you know now will not exist in 10 years. Mm, I'm probably exaggerating, but the overall idea is that large language models and generative AI in general penetrate most industries. And we had some estimations and thoughts that it would go into specific domains, and now it basically broke those expectations because it gets into management, strategizing, medical industry, logistics, marketing, and many others. And while I was reading that article, I thought, like, is it really that impactful? Because the way they described it, that it basically kind of already changed everything. Like, things will never be the same in medical diagnostics. They will never be the same in marketing analysis, market research, and campaigns analysis. And I kind of doubt that. Maybe it's because of these Sprints app is a marketplace for AI apps, and they have to do that. It's kind of a
Okay.
marketing article. But I hear that a lot, like from basically conferences, from people at events. They continuously say that this is going to change the way we live. Would you theoretically agree or not with this statement,
Yes, I
or
would
not?
agree or not. Yeah, for sure, for sure. I
Thanks.
think there are so many levels and layers to this question and to this whole kind of dilemma. I would probably, excuse me, start with this article. Like I have questions to this article and other articles you linked to. I guess that the Stanford one was better of them all, but here it says it starts LLM statistic. Global LLM market is set to grow to $1.5 trillion in 2003 to like what? It doesn't even make sense what they say here. No, it says it will grow from 1.6 trillion dollars in 2023 to 260 million in 2030. Like what? I don't see growth in that. Like, no, am I misreading the article? Maybe that they generated this crap with some sort of large language model that they sell, and then then they want us to discuss this now. I think it doesn't make too much sense. But I think my initial question was to the term, like, what is LLM market, like what it is, so that they predict the growth, whatever it is, like growth of what. They do not provide definition and stuff like that, and I see that quite a lot. And this is where I would agree that it's overhyped. People do not care to provide definitions, details, and then they just hype it is going to be hot, great, big, jump in there and stuff like that. And that's largely is done for you to kind of get on hook on the hype train and spend your hard-earned dollars, whatever it is, on that magical AI kind of thing. But at the same
Speaking
time, on
of
the tech
your
side,
well earned, well deserved dollars, do you pay for any AI stuff?
mm, no, I don't think so. Well, I may be paying indirectly because everything and your fridge now has AI capabilities built into that. So I
Definitely not my
paid for my.
fridge, but
No, you just don't know. You just don't know that there will be an update or press release on the manufacturer's website say that, well, actually, the fridge you bought 10 years ago, it has this little circuit that does intelligent decision about controlling the temperature in your freezer and stuff like that. I don't think I'm paying for anything directly, but I do have access to some of the things kind of for free. Yeah.
cheaters. All right. And how often do you use LLMs like GPT, Gemini, or anything else, if ever?
Directly, I you may call me like a retrograde or something, but I don't use them too often.
Is it intentional decision not to use them, or it just never came to that and you didn't find?
No, I think with the things I tried or with the things I do and with the way I think the things I do should be done, I just didn't find much utility in that yet. It's not to say that there is no utility or anything like that. It's just maybe I didn't find the workflow that would be useful or beneficial for me. That also goes with me saying that I didn't spend too much time looking or trying to set up that workflow as well.
That's a fair point. In my case, I use GPT on a daily basis, basically,
Mm-hmm.
and I think it automated a number of things in my life. For instance, I have this assistant there, and I do the voice texting in Google Doc. I just basically get any kind of message that I'd like to send, and then there is an assistant, my GPT, that works as my secretary. It corrects all the spelling mistakes, puts all the commas and periods, and organizes the text. So whenever I'd like to write something long, I just basically use the voice speech on the Google Doc to get the sheet and drop it there, and voila, my message is ready. I basically correct a few minor things if it's some names or titles or something that neither Google Doc nor ChatGPT could get, and it's ready to go.
But
And
then,
mhm.
sorry, but then this is something that could have been done even pre GPT whatever days,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
It's
definitely. But basically, it's a feature that is very convenient. And the other one is that I've created a PDF file with something like 200 of my Facebook posts.
mm-hmm.
And I do the same now. I just write some ideas that I have, and I ask GPT to rewrite it using my style, my phrasing, my wording from the previous posts, using specific structure to shape the new post. So basically, I don't have to do the editing and organizing. I just basically give it a few ideas, and it picks the proper words from my vocabulary and from the previous history of my posts. And usually those are quite good. I correct a few minor things and they can go online. They sound like me.
Interesting. Because I would have questions about that because every once in a while I would be on a receiving end of something someone generated with ChatGPT, whatever, and I sort of get annoyed because the thing that could have taken 3 words takes 3 paragraphs or something along those lines. So I don't always appreciate even though it's kind of beautiful and stuff like that, and maybe great from the grammar point of view, the content.
But once again,
I
it
have
uses my
questions about
style. It doesn't use GPT style that you can recognize in terms of structure or sayings, because there is an previously uploaded file with my texts,
it.
and all it has to do is to adapt this like
Maybe.
thesis using my style, and I can put the limit, like do it in 100 words or do it in 200 words, and it usually does the job quite well.
Cool. Interesting.
So these are the regular things, and then there are some complicated tasks like content creation for some workshops. I mentioned the strategic session facilitation workshop that I
Mm-hmm.
was running, and we basically had to give roles to 6 people. They would
Mm-hmm.
have to behave in a different way, and GPT detailized them with really good details. I just gave the overall framework, what's going to happen, who is going to be who, what are the main things about these people. And then GPT added lots of details about behavioral, mood factors, some questions, some doubts, some concerns, some thoughts. And these were like the full printable page role descriptions for people. And it went really well. Like for me, it would take, I would say, a few hours to complete this thing. And with GPT, we basically did it in 20 minutes.
Interesting. Yeah, I have a whole bunch of philosophical thoughts there, but let's see if we need to get into that.
Well, why don't we get into there? Because our agenda,
Because
screw that.
I think on economical side, right? So that means that you generated this thing in like 20 minutes instead of 2 hours. It uses standard model available to everyone. That means that by and large, anyone who would set a goal of doing something like that could do exactly the same thing. So it kind of commoditizes this whole process of creation, which means that if I would not be personally, I would not get too excited about GPT being able to do my core work or core job function, because that would mean that my job function is essentially commoditized, and I need to be looking for something else. And if it, the bad thing about that is not that the GPT specifically would commoditize that, but in principle that it is commoditizable, and if not GPT, there will be something else that would do the same thing. So I'm kind of it gives me a pause, that excitement that many people have that they can do their jobs faster. It doesn't mean to, the way I read it is that, hey, like previously you did it just quite ineffectively. If you can do that much more faster now, and yeah,
Yeah,
and
I
I
physically
don't necessarily
can't do
think.
it faster because you have to make it up, you have to text it, you have to edit it, you have to prepare the layouts for this stuff, and it takes time. And basically, mm, it's like an assistant because, in fact, if I created the overall ideas and gave it to a diligent first year student of a uni and asked to detailize
Hmm.
it and write it down, keeping the main essence, I think one would do that. But it would still take the student some time to come up with the
Right.
ideas, to organize everything, and I would have to wait for the result of this. This is not my core job because my core activity is training people with this thing, being there, giving feedback, guiding their work, something GPT probably wouldn't do just now, maybe sometime later, but not yet. And all the preparation that it would take to get into the classroom always seemed to me like routine because I know what kind of task I'd like to get. I have it in my
Hmm.
mind. I've already shaped the final outcome and the result. And then I spend a few hours texting it or working on the details or typos or
Hmm.
coming up with like the fifth mood of a participant that are just minor details that they're not dominant for the task. They don't matter much, but they
Hmm.
do help the participant act accordingly and get more out of the activity.
So that makes sense, and I think the important aspect here, or important new thing that things like GPT or the current generation of AI bring to the table is that, like you said, is that ability to scale. Even if I were a bit kind of cynical about the particular outcome of the work, but then if we look at the different dimension of that, like if it can be easily done and you can hire first year undergraduate and undergraduate student to do this job for you. If you wanted to do 100 of those things, you would need 100 of those students, and the coordination costs and stuff like that would be very challenging. But here with something like GPT, you can do that at scale kind of really easily. And this is also something that changes the equation. And there are multiple different use cases or scenarios where you do not, and kind of circling back to my point, like you do not need to generate the perfect test, the most unique and authentic kind of thing, but being able to generate a lot of that can be helpful. Like if, I don't know, like with ad campaigns or something like that, you can generate automatically at scale, generate multiple different variants of the copy for the ad, run a test against them, and really choose something that's super best, which is difficult to do. Otherwise, it's not impossible to do with humans and stuff like that. And it's not necessarily that the quality of each individual ad would be better than what humans can come up with, but the fact that you did it at scale in a narrow use case changes the equation a lot. Yep.
Scalability is one thing, and speeding up the process of some activities is the other because usually brainstorming of names takes a lot of my time. Like if you ask me, like, here's a podcast, let's think of the name, you lost me for 2 days. Like I'll be thinking about metaphors, ideas, and some other thoughts. And when I ask GPT to suggest 50 titles, and then I at least can see which direction I would like to go to, I pick 10 ideas that I like, and I give it more guidance, saying like, let's go there and not go there. Suggest 50 more, and then I like three things, and I can then narrow it down to something that is really like Stratosphere, basically. Stratosphere was inspired by suggestions from GPT. It was not suggested by GPT, but I could definitely see where it's coming, and it took me like 10 minutes to get this sound title for a podcast, which I would definitely spend way more time thinking about, and I'm not sure I would come to something way better.
Well, I would say that we should not discard that opportunity as well, because we cannot. It's notoriously difficult, even if at all possible, to measure effect of things that did not happen. So we don't know. It could have been that you on your own could came up on your own with your cat. You could came up with a much greater title, but we will leave this aside. I think what you described here is probably in my estimation, at least currently, is the strongest type of use case for something like GPTs, where you the final product is still produced by you, like you choose the name for the podcast, but you kind of accelerate the preparatory work for that. And the idea there would be that whatever you ask AI or LLM to do, it does not have to be precise. And in fact, the fact that it's not precise, and when it generates 50 however many names for the podcast that you ask it, it's great if it can vary, and the diversity is beneficial for the end result that you are then curating on top of whatever model generated. And I think use cases like that are where current LLMs, in my estimation, are going to shine, where you do not ask them precise question with exactly the right answer. They are not good at that, and it's not clear whether they will be able to be good at that, but something where the vagueness, the imperfection and impreciseness are a feature, not a bug. That would be things where
Not a bag
LLMs are
either.
super helpful. Not a bug yet, for sure.
Mm, Speaking of which, do you think that it kind of works in coding? Because this is something I keep hearing, that there are lots of memes about the fact that can GPT write code without copy pasting it from somewhere, and then the question, can humans actually do something like that? Mm, I was talking to a number of entrepreneurs related to outsourcing,
Mm-hmm.
because basically Ukraine is full of outsourcing businesses,
Sure.
and they are kind of doubtful on the impact. They can see how it could potentially improve the productivity of some positions,
Mm-hmm.
because developers is their core unit. Like a middle developer that knows what has to be done can probably do it faster, having more tools, not just. What was the name of this place where people would copy other code
Stack
from?
Overflow.
Yeah,
Stack
Stack
Overflow.
Overflow.
Yep.
Uh, Basically, it's an accelerated way to analyze
Mm-hmm.
different Stack Overflow forms and finding something.
Mm-hmm.
Mm, but fundamentally, do you think it's basically it might replace low level coding at certain level?
There are so many things to unwrap there, because when you say low level coding, to me, low level coding means that you go lower in the technology stack. So that low level coding is like you're doing it in C or assembly language. I don't think
All right, let me rephrase
we
that.
are replacing
Junior
that kind of.
level, like something that beginners do.
I don't know. Uh, to be honest, I think there are several aspects to that. First, I think we are still in relatively early days of this technology, right? And the products that we have currently might not be a best representation of how this technology or undergirding ideas can be used. And the things I saw, like code AI based or LLM based code completions, at least in my experience, were a mixed bag. Sometimes that they nail it precisely, and you can kind of type the whole kind of not chapter, how to like piece or block of code just by clicking tab because it's generated so precisely. And sometimes you just get annoyed, like, oh, let's just you have to do extra clicks to get out of this generated code. But I think there is there is potential in that, like, based on how it works. It's not just the prediction based on syntax trees or something like that, which we used to have previously, right? It would say if you type an SQL statement, select something, 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 at some point it will say like the next word needs to be from, because this is how SQL select queries are structured. But with LLM, it would be able to put just from and meaningful, informed further statements, like the tables you are choosing from based on what you wrote previously. This is something that is harder, difficult to do otherwise, and with LLMs we can do that. So I'm mildly optimistic about this kind of stuff. Do I think it's going to replace humans? I don't feel like it, because
At this stage, I'm not asking whether it would replace humans, but whether it could like kill junior programmer as a position. Like people would have to
no.
learn to think engineerily from the beginning. They would not have to do the manual, like basically like calculators when they appeared. They would kill a specific type of jobs and skills that people would have to relearn.
I think I'm not sure the comparison here is apt, in a sense that com- with calculators, computers could replace the entirety of that job, right? There
Well, they
is
still haven't.
nothing.
Like there are still accountants and finance managers, and
But they are not doing calculations, right? So like we used to have the whole departments of literal calculators who would solve differential equations and whatnot for complex scientific research or like planning whatever exercises. All of those jobs were replaced by computers, but this is because computers could do precisely the same thing, but so much faster, more accurate, and whatnot. With junior programmers and something that has junior, middle, and senior kind of stuff, junior, you do not hire junior programmer to be a junior programmer. You hire them to become a senior programmer at some point. And one might argue that a prerequisite for someone being a senior programmer is that for a while they need to be the junior programmer and kind of learn, well, not say learn, but experience the stuff themselves and kind of draw lessons from that so that they would know how to operate at a higher level. So I don't think from that perspective, I don't think we would kill junior programmer as an occupation, because how else you would get senior programmers?
let me suggest another example. I have a master's degree in engineering,
Sure.
and it's civil engineering, like we build stuff.
Right.
And my professors are from generation that believed that you have to learn how to blueprint things with your hand,
Right.
otherwise you won't be able to use AutoCAD. And that's not really true. I mean, you can quite effectively use AutoCAD without being able to draw yourself, like with a pencil and ruler and stuff, and you could still get the same outcome, usually faster and more effectively. And you still get the logic, but
Mm-hmm.
it improves things. And this is where their belief was just slowing them down, because we had to spend lots of our study time
Sure.
drawing things when we actually didn't have to.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's the next level. This AutoCAD can actually do calculations for you,
Mm-hmm.
and it can count the concrete type, like
Mm-hmm.
how what metal constructions should be there, what is the thickness and the consistency of most of things there. And this is where I think it kind of does better job than I would
Mm-hmm.
if I were doing it
Sure.
manually, because first of all, it's different standards, like
Mm-hmm.
Ukrainian, American, British. This is super hard to keep in mind, and something you can just opt with a few clicks, and
Mm-hmm.
it recalculates the entire thing. Like if you would like to build the same project in Germany and in Ukraine,
Mm-hmm.
it would use the standards of these countries just automatically. And then basically to you just have to know what the final outcome should potentially look like. You should be able to assess and evaluate the results to
Mm-hmm.
see whether it makes sense, whether there is some risk of mistakes or something that could go wrong in the databases or in the calculations. But you should be able to see it from the very high level, like something I probably not, because I don't have experience in engineering lots of
Right.
buildings. But I could definitely see how during our workshop on GPTs, people who do estimates on technical requirements did way better job using GPT and guiding it somewhere where it had to get in calculation of
Mm-hmm.
hours and estimating the tasks. And I think that there is a line here where you basically have to get a different set of skills to get into a position of an engineer right now
Mm-hmm.
in the construction industry. You don't need to do a number of things that you had to do previously. And you basically take the responsibility and the judgment and the evaluation and you cut a lot of preparation stages that you would previously do by
Mm-hmm.
your hand and by just looking at a number of calculations and trying to get what's normal and what's okay and what's risky and what's acceptable.
Mm-hmm.
And these days you still have to do that, but you don't need to learn all those documents, draw, and do a number of things. So, in certain way, this is something that junior architects were doing for dozens of years. There
Mm-hmm.
would be senior architects who would do the conceptual work and check their calculations, check their drawings, and the junior architects were basically manual workers who would check the documents and do the drawings and bring them to the seniors, and seniors would say, yeah, that's good, that's not, like fix this and change that.
Mm-hmm.
And by this metaphor, this is something I meant, that the junior position, there would still be unexperienced people, but
Mm-hmm.
the number of work and the type of tasks that they were doing previously would probably change.
No doubt, and that it will definitely change. And I think this is a great example that you are offering here, because and it boils in my mind, that boils exactly to what you said. The content and the meaning and the purpose of the work is going to change, because if we get back to your example of that drawing stuff and ask ourselves, like, why back in the day that was a required and necessary skill, we can come up with some theories or explanations for that, right? If you do not learn to draw the things very precisely, it means that, like, from whatever the construction bureau or architect's firm, that they would do sloppy drawings, they would give it to people who would execute on those drawings, and if those drawings are imprecise, the bad things are going to happen. So that exercise of learning to draw was really a lesson in precision in communication, right? Even though it was, well, the way I would read it. And then AutoCAD and things like that helped with that. You could produce a very precise drawing for something really easily, and then it went one step further, because then we got those machines that could take the AutoCAD drawing and produce and cut stuff based on that drawing, so that the necessity or the severity and the likelihood and the risk of communication errors between the drawer and the executor of something basically came down to zero, and it's no longer a valuable and differentiating skill because there are better ways to solve this particular problem. But then it means that the bottleneck, that critical piece in the entire process, moves elsewhere, and this is where the kind of humans and their attention should go. And now maybe the junior architects, it was generally, I think it is still very expensive to build buildings, and just to just see how they um, come out, right? But maybe at some point, but some mistakes that used to be very costly maybe are less costly now, and we can allow junior architects to do more of higher level work because the mistakes there are not going to be as critical, and it will give them an opportunity to learn something so that they can go even higher when they start doing more senior jobs. I think that makes sense.
I agree with you on that. And rolling back to the initial question I asked,
Mm-hmm.
I think one of the reasons why the topic is kind of overhyped is because most people don't see it the way you see it. And there is a new technology that
Mm-hmm.
many people don't understand. They can't really estimate how it's going to change their industry. And there is a huge level of uncertainty whether something is happening, something is
Mm-hmm.
really happening, something bad is really happening right now, and we don't know about it. And I think this anxiety kind of forces people to try to learn.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think there is much to learn just yet because there is not there are not many cases and applications and like every event saying something about AI
Mm-hmm.
that I attend is usually quite mediocre. Like they basically describe a single use case, how we did it, what went okay, what went wrong, but
Mm-hmm.
it's too early to draw any conclusions and to build models and to say how it's going to work on the industry level or how it's going to
Sure.
replace something or change something. And all these like quick conclusions, I think they're still built by the demand that people are looking for these answers. They're
Mm-hmm.
looking for articles that would tell them how it's going to transform, what these trends are going to do. Let's say in HR. In Ukraine, there are two topics these days: what to do with people being drafted to the army, and what to do with AI in HR and learning and development. Just two
Interesting.
topics. Everything else is not relevant.
Interesting. I think that makes a lot of sense. I've been here for a long time now, and I've seen and witnessed with my own eyes like previous hype cycles. It might go back as far as everything is better with Bluetooth. Like there was this thing where people literally thought that we need to put Bluetooth like in every possible piece of tech or electronics. It's going to be so much better. It wasn't. We figured that well, that there are things where Bluetooth is super useful and helpful, and there are a whole bunch of other things where it doesn't make any difference whatsoever. Then there was another thing like 3D printing. I vividly remember like a couple of months where this was super hot, and like I think I was already working in roll up or something along those lines, and there was a startup kind of event or something, and someone came to me and said, are you like, do you have to do something with 3D printers? And like, no, we do this cloud service. They looked at me like, are you crazy? Like, everyone needs to do a 3D printing because this is the future. Turns out it was not. Then we had the blockchain, which was going to solve everything for us, which it didn't. And now LLMs are here, and there is definitely this hype component where everyone is apprehensive, like, what does this mean? Am I going to miss this train? Do I need to jump on it? There is definitely this element there, but also I think that the scale element that we discussed here, and some other aspects that make this technology, not specific products or even use cases that we are using this now, a very profound change that can change things drastically, but in the longer perspective. It's like with the internet, right? When internet came about, we knew that's going to be big thing, sort of. Some people knew, but we didn't know in which ways. And looking back at like 30 years ago, into 90s or 80s, when internet was invented, I think it was impossible to predict what internet will bring about with its scale and stuff like that. But now we are here with the internet, and it's great by and large. And I think this whole kind of LLM GPT kind of technology, the undergirding technology, is going to enable a whole bunch of interesting and useful things that we probably cannot even think about. And I would remind everyone of the quote of the quote by Bill Gates, when at some point he said that we overestimate the amount of change that can happen in 2 years and underestimate the amount of change that can happen in 10 years. And I think this is very applicable. Like the hypey thing, oh, like everyone will talk to chat and generate all of their emails with LLMs. That this is the kind of fast change, the meaning and impact of which everyone, I think, overestimates, but we underestimate the smaller gradual changes that are happening somewhere deeper, that will manifest themselves in kind of in a real way when we look back at like decades kind of scale to see how we got from where we were to where we are now.
There is one thing that concerns me
Mm-hmm.
about this trend, and basically, correct me if I understood you incorrectly, but you and I believe that critical thinking ability to evaluate and synthesize the solution with the
Mm-hmm.
help of LLMs is basically the core competency right now. Like, you can be more effective if you know what you'd like to get, if you can assess
Mm-hmm.
what you receive and correct the way it goes. And my concern is that many people kind of rely on large language models to produce things that they actually, like writing essays at school
Mm-hmm.
or university. They are not at the skill level or competence level when they can say, yeah, this is exactly what I wanted to write, because
Mm-hmm.
they didn't read stuff. They just linked the stuff to LLM, and the model read it.
Mm-hmm.
It's not the person who read it. And how can a person who didn't read these kind of things estimate the synthesis of the ideas of, I don't know, philosophers or engineers or doctors or whoever they had to analyze? And since our academia is kind of slow in adapting learning methods, we can see that, like,
Mm-hmm.
for the past 20 years, we are basically slower and slower adapting to the reality. And the biggest estimation criteria and evaluation criteria in academic work is writing stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Right now, my concern is that we will either lose the trust to the formal academic criteria like diplomas, certificates, and stuff, because it would probably mean nothing given they continue to estimate stuff by essays and
Mm-hmm.
writing and papers and this kind of stuff. But in the long run, I'm kind of afraid that if we rely on LLMs too much, we could gradually downgrade our critical thinking skills, like we did with calculators and mathematics. Like, I'm not able to see the how correct or not correct the calculator is when it's more than 4 digits. Like, after
Hmm.
5 digits, I just have to trust the thing. And with the calculator, it's easy because basically there is a formula which is
Hmm.
very straightforward. There's not much room for mistakes. And with the language, there is a lot of room for mistakes. There is a lot of vagueness. And I can see a tendency how people kind of give up the responsibility on the judgment and evaluation when they get the results of this kind of thing. So in the long term, I'm kind of concerned whether the availability of large language models, inadaptability of our education system in general, and inability to match these two things could potentially lead us to mm, larger groups of people uh, getting lower critical thinking skills. Well, let's put it this way.
I think I understand your concern, but I myself, I don't think I share it to the degree I sense in what you're describing. And the reason for that would be that by and large, I don't feel like the use of LLMs materially changes the stuff in that area, right? People used to produce diplomas and papers and theses that were copy and pasted, that was generated in some other random ways, and it did not prevent them from getting diplomas and stuff and stuff like that. So I think you cannot you cannot break what is broken already, kind of mentality I have there. But having said that, I think what you are saying, or what the argument that you are putting forward suggests, is that there is critical importance of in how do you, like, feedback function that you get for the work you produce with or without LLMs, and the quality of that feedback function is what sort of determines the quality of the work and your ability to progress towards it. If the educational or academia works in a way that it will give you like green light to nonsense generated with GPT or without GPT, that's not great. And then maybe the academic feedback is not the greatest form of feedback function that one can use to improve their work and produce valuable stuff. But then finding those functions, if like with the internet, you can write an essay and you make it available to everyone, and if it does not resonate, you will get like 0 likes or something like that. And this is a feedback function. Maybe you try this 10 times in a row with GPT, you get 0 likes, but then you sit like, oh, it doesn't work. Maybe let me sit for a weekend and think and have some new new thoughts and share them with people, and you get likes. It will send a signal that, oh, like, doing it this way is better. It gives me more result. And think in this world of generative stuff, like we, in one of the examples we started with, when you were looking for a title for podcast, you played the role of that feedback uh, function for the output there. And this is going to be a critical element of successful and useful applications of things like LLMs, I think.
My concern here is on the meta level, very similar to what you're saying. But if I can give another example, a really short
Mhm.
one, it's like with handwriting and typing,
Right.
two different activities that produce different kinds of results. And if you remember, when the computers were becoming more and more available, there was a
Right.
concern that people will just stop handwriting at all, and they will totally switch to typing. There were even school experiments where they wouldn't
Hmm.
teach kids to handwrite; they would straight go into typing and
Hmm.
teach them how to do that. And I think right now it kind of balanced out,
Hmm.
and people still learn handwriting. You can still opt to handwrite or to type. Many
Hmm.
people choose not to handwrite, and more people choose not to. But in my specific example, since I was learning with handwriting a lot, it's very linked to my thinking process, like the way
Hmm.
I meditate and stuff, analyze things, and it's way harder for me to use digital tools for these kind of things. That's why I still have those pages
Sure.
on my table every time I think about something complicated, and only then I digitalize these ideas and thoughts. And I might imagine that right now we probably will have a wave of something similar as
Hmm.
when people were giving up handwriting, uh, but with standard thinking processes. And this is a bit scarier than handwriting. And this is something that can last a bit longer in my estimates. I think that it would still bounce back and people will, like you mentioned, when the
Hmm.
feedback loop catches them. But I think that the cost of this feedback loop might be way higher than in the examples of a few schools and a few years of kids that were just late in receiving these kind of skills.
Interesting. I hear what you're saying, and then that's definitely true that when in with some things that if we imagine something like the societal developments and something like that to act as a pendulum, right, and it goes back, then it overcorrects going there and then swings back and so on and so forth. It is entirely possible then that with the evolution of society, technology, and whatnot, those swings of the pendulum are going to be longer and it takes longer to correct, and then the period of correction lasts shorter just because the pendulum moves so much faster through those periods. That's true, and this is entirely possible. But somehow I do have faith in ability of complex adaptive systems to sort of self correct and self regulate. Of course, those that self
Until
correction
they
may
fail.
take,
Yeah.
yeah, may take time. Yeah, things may fail, but yeah, I guess that's concerning, but somehow not too concerning to me where I sit
Well,
now.
yeah, I can see your point. All right, I guess that would be it, unless you'd like to add something else.
No, I think that was a great discussion, and I think it would be really profound that we remind people what you said, that critical thinking skills are critical now, and they're going to continue to be critical and important going forward. Don't give them up. Don't outsource them to LLMs and other techno machinery that might come your way.
Amen.
Good weeks.
Good weeks.